What is going on, folks? Hope everybody is having a wonderful Wednesday evening. Let's get this video started, guys. This is also going to go out to my friends at Kingdom Seekers. As again, haven't met them formally or personally, but again, just over YouTube. Peace to you guys in Yahshua Messiah's name. Remember Acts 17:11. Search the scriptures daily to see if what I'm saying is true, or anyone, I rather should say, is true, folks. Just don't take my word for it, or any minister's word for it. Don't be as a noble Bereans. Look into these things, folks. They were eager to receive the word from the Apostle Paul, but they just did not take his word at it. They searched diligently the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. We're supposed to do that because a lot of false teachers have gone out in the world and deceived many. I may be one of them. I pray that I'm not. It's not in me to do that. I mean that. I'm not just saying that because it's cliche, but it's. I sincerely mean that. Just doing as I'm told, folks. Okay, it's the best way to say that. Again, this one's going to go out on YouTube, and again, I'm going to put this on one of the videos that Kingdom Seekers put out on Colossians 2:16 through 17. And this is not a rebuttal, but it's just addressing some concerns, and I hope it's received well. Honestly, I sincerely mean that in Yahshua's name. So let's go ahead and get started on that. There's something I know that I'm not that I'm forgetting here before I dive right on in here. This is going to correlate into the videos that I've been putting out on Acts 10, Kill and Eat, Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council, and Galatians 2, 11 through 14. The best way to describe, I guess I'm trying to find a good analogy. I used to drive buses for 25 years. City buses, school buses, charter buses, going out of town. And before I had gotten I guess it shows you how old I'm getting. Before I had gotten a GPS, everything was through those AAA maps. If you're going on a long distance, if you miss a turn of the fork on the road, and you wind up taking a wrong turn, you can go for miles and miles and miles before you realized you took a wrong turn. And what happens, especially if you're using those maps like we did back in the day, you can make that wrong turn and then think, okay, about another 50 miles down the road, I'm going to make a right-hand turn here. And you wind up making a right-hand turn 50 miles down, which was not the right-hand turn you were thinking. And so then it just leads to another wrong turn. And that's happened before. And at some point in that road, you hit the point where you realize, I think I went the wrong way. So then the trick is, now you got to backtrack and remember, in your mind, where did I make that wrong turn? Where's the last point I remember that I was going the right way, and then something happened, and that takes time to backtrack. It happens. And now we have GPS, so that's. Times have changed, but back then, that's the best analogy I could do that to give for this scenario. And again, this is applying to Kingdom Seekers or anybody watching this video, folks. I'm not picking on Kingdom Seekers. I'm not. They seem like some good guys over there. Now, with that being said and done, I was a Messianic for 20 years. Again, I don't want to make this about me, but back in my youth, from the age of 5 up, again, I was a Messianic for 20 years. I'm well familiar with the teachings of folks like Kingdom Seekers and others. I was, I guess, one of them, I guess you could say at one time. I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Catholic, so just to help understand. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because it's to help eliminate any thought that I have biases. Like, this is going to fit into this biasness, okay, or I'm being partial. No, actually I'm not. I still call them my beloved Messianics. I understand how Paul felt as far as with the Jews concerned. I see same similarity for me. But anyway, enough about me. But just understand, I'm well familiar with with the doctrines of the Messianics. No, but I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Catholic. A baptized member of the body of the Messiah. Given the lay on of the hands, the Holy Spirit. And I had my road to Damascus in October 21st, 22nd, 23rd, in 2018 in a way that science cannot explain. Okay, it doesn't have to explain. So with that being said and done, folks, let's go ahead and get back to the topic matter. As far as folks like Kingdom Seekers, and again, I'm not picking on them just only because this video is relevant. If you miss that fork on the road, okay, one of them is Acts chapter 10, kill and eat. I always tell people Acts 10 is a minefield. It is a minefield. Okay, there was a time when I taught Acts 10 the way Kingdom Seekers does. Kill and eat has nothing to do with animals. Peter clearly tells you the interpretation of the vision, and in Acts chapter 11, he expounds that matter. It's clear. You Christians got it wrong. Trust me, there was as a Messianic, I was well trained in that. That's not the case anymore. Yahweh led me in another direction. Acts 10 is one of those minefields. It's one of those minefields. If you don't get Acts 10 right, it's going to lead to problems in your interpretation of Acts 15, the Jerusalem Council, what I call the starter pack lie of Acts 15:21. It's going to compound into a bigger problem when you get to Galatians 2, because and you'll see in this video, I hate to do it to my friends at Kingdom Seekers, I really do, but yeah, I was very disturbed at something that's involving Galatians, but regardless, again, we'll get to that in a moment. When you get to Galatians 2:11 through 14, then groups that desire to be teachers of the law, that confidently affirm they know what they're saying, all of a sudden they don't know what they're saying. They come up with some of the most ridiculous of rebuttals and arguments to try to explain what's going on in Galatians 2. Then this continues on in Colossians 2:16. It just gets worse and worse. And that's why I hope and pray that this video helps. It's not meant to embarrass. It's not what I'm trying to do. Understand that's where I'm hoping that this leads. But even further back, if you drop the ball on the Matthew 5:17, you'll see how that's going to play out. Again, that was our finishing sword. Us Torah-keeping believers back in the day, I know. Think not that I came to destroy the law of the prophets, came not to destroy but to fulfill. Okay, until heaven and earth pass away. That was how we always finished. I was taking out Christian ministers at the age of 13. Well acclimated with that doctrine. Not anymore. Yahweh has got me going in the right way, like us to say. But I still have a lot to learn. Always will be a kid in the classroom. If you miss that, the fact that Yahshua the Messiah fulfilled all things, as he says in John 19, it is finished, it's accomplished. If you miss that fork on the road, then this is going to lead to a bigger problem in Acts 10, and then the bigger problem in Acts 15. It just gets worse and worse, and you just like that fork in the road. That's what I'm trying to. I try to stick to one topic. In this situation, it is Colossians 2:16. However, though, I can't help but notice, even with the guest speaker that Kingdom Seekers has on there, a gentleman by the name of Jared, I guess who deals with exegetics, I guess, I believe so. It's the same thing. These guys are intelligent enough. They are intelligent enough, smarter than me. I'm not afraid to say that. But then you got to ask yourself, is pride now in the way? Because when you show them the facts and the details, then at some point you got to ask, is the person just being prideful? That's a whole different animal. That's a whole different ballgame. At that point, that's not. That's where you got to take a different approach with people like that. But again, I'm not accusing my friends at Kingdom Seekers of that at all. I'm just my experience in the past. So to start out with on this video, guys, I'm not afraid to say this. Yahweh told me, put away that messianic sword of Matthew 5:17 that I used to pride myself with back in the day. This is a sword that you need to use going forward, and that's James 3:13 through 18. I always tell people, some Bibles say Jacob, Somebody like mine says Jacob, others say James. I always tell people there's ever a disagreement between two believers in the Messiah. If you have a disagreement on doctrine or on any matter between two individuals or two groups that are believers in our Savior, okay, you take that disagreement over to James 3:13 through 18. And if you're honest with yourself, that's the key. If you're honest with yourself, you run that through what I call that two-edged sword, the two wisdom rule, and you're going to find out every single time who's right and who's wrong. It is undefeated. I cannot emphasize that enough. It is undefeated. There's a reason why Jacob puts that in his epistle, folks. He was the first bishop of the Apostolic Assembly, the biological brother of Yahshua the Messiah. He was at the Jerusalem Council. In other words, something happened. Okay, me personally, the events of Revelation 12 have taken place after Yahshua the Messiah has come back from the dead. Okay, there's now two wisdoms on this earth. One of them is an earthly wisdom. The other one is the wisdom from above. Both are wisdoms, but one wisdom is not coming from above. It is demonic, sensual. I'll just read the passage. Jacob 3:13 through 18. Jacob 3:13 through 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by his good life his works in meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and faction in your heart, glory not and lie not against the truth. It doesn't matter how much Torah you got behind it. It doesn't matter how much scholarship you got behind it. It doesn't matter how much Torah you got behind it. If it falls under this criteria, okay? If it falls under this criteria, verse 15, this wisdom is not a wisdom that comes down from above, but it's earthly, it's sensual, and it's demonic. For where there's jealousy and faction, there is confusion. That's the key. There is confusion and every vile deed. Now, verse 17, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable and gentle. It's easy to be entreated. It's full of mercy and good fruits. And here's the key. These are the two big ones. It's without partiality. Without partiality. And the biggest one, in my opinion, without hypocrisy. Not with hypocrisy, not a little bit of hypocrisy, not with partiality, not with a little, no. It has no partiality in it and no hypocrisy in it. The wisdom of this earth, it doesn't matter how much scholarship you have, it doesn't matter how much Torah you got. If you're bringing partiality with it and hypocrisy with it, it gets shut down as doctrines, as demonic wisdom, doctrines of demons. That is undefeated. It is the knowledge and the knowledge and spirit of the wisdom of Yahweh, which is Yahshua the Messiah, which is our Savior Yahshua the Messiah, and the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace for them that make peace. So that's what I'm going to be using as I'm looking at this. It's a 17-minute video that Kingdom Seekers put out, and I understand. Even though it's entitled a breakdown of Colossians 2:16 through 17, I understand that y'all put out a longer video that was a little over 2 hours involving R.L. Solberg. Okay, and so I think this is just a portion of it. I'm not here to defend R.L. Solberg. I've seen R.L. I agree with a lot of things R.L. puts out, and there's things I don't agree with R.L. about. When it comes to subject matters like this, I notice R.L. Says a lot of things that I say that we're almost kind of in tune on that. But when it comes to defending Christmas, Easter, these pagan holidays, that's where I'm like, man, RL, you're better than that. I totally disagree with him. No, but anyway, that's a different subject. So I'm not here to defend R.L. Solberg, even though me and him have a lot in common when it comes to this topic matter. But just for the record, again, when it comes to the defending of these pagan holidays, no, or Sunday worship, no, that's just not. I'm not in agreement with him. With all that being said and done, though, the only reason why I bring up Ariel is because I noticed he got brought up a little bit in this video, only because I realized it was a portion of that longer one. So again, this is not about Ariel Solberg. Okay, good guy, by the way. Consider him also a brother in the Messiah. Also, we all have our differences. I'm not perfect. He's not perfect. Kingdom Seekers isn't perfect. None of us are. We strive to, but again, we all fall short. We know that. So let's just get started on this video. Again, very passionate subject, but again, let's go ahead and get started with this. Sorry about that. I thought I already had it in tune. Let me go ahead and get this over here. Here we go. I believe this is it right here. From Kingdom Seekers, a breakdown of Colossians 2:16 through 17.
So I thought, I discussed this privately with my buddy here, and I thought we would go ahead and just introduce the verse, introduce the popular interpretation, and how we Hebrews Torah observers interpret it, and then we'll go straight into Solberg's video, or straight to my buddy's teaching on it, which I think he does a great job. If you guys ever are interested, I'm going to leave his link in the description below. He does a great job explaining it. So let's get started. So the book of Colossians, it's in the city of Colossae. Paul wrote this book around 60 to 62 AD. And the city of Colossae was a city in modern Turkey, I believe southwest Turkey. It was a busy trade city. So any busy trade city of that time is a crossroad for cultures, religions, philosophies. So you're getting a mixed multitude. So the problem with this assembly at that time was that a lot of Greek belief systems, Gnosticism, and everything else was being forced upon the assembly of Colossae, including human philosophy, traditions. Here's another word I'm going to try to say, and correct me if I'm wrong. Trust me, I don't mind being corrected. Asceticism, harsh self-denial, and mysticism, and angel worship. So we're going to get into all that, but pretty much Paul is addressing that in his letter. Let's just read it right away, right off the gate. Colossians 2:16 to 17 says, "Therefore let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food and drink, or with regard to a festival, or a new moon, or a Sabbath. These are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ," or Messiah. So this, if you're new to the Torah movement, this verse, or these verses are used often. As soon as they find out you eat clean, as soon as they find out you keep the Sabbath, and so much more, a lot of times they'll go straight to Colossians 2:16 and 17. If you have any thoughts, by the way, Jared, I'm just throwing out the introductory. If you have any want to add to what I'm saying, just butt in there and cut me off. This is my brother, Mark, by the way. He's in the house, y'all, so the roof will come down. I'm just kidding. That's my buddy, my brother, Mark. Good to see you, brother. So the popular interpretation, a typical what I call Sunday Christian interpretation, is the argument that Paul teaches that believers should no longer be concerned with keeping the practices of Torah, such as the food laws, the feast days, the sighting of the new moons, or keeping of the weekly Sabbath, because those things were only shadows pointing to Messiah. And they understand Paul is saying here that since Messiah has come, Christians are not obligated to observe these commands and should not let anyone judge them for not keeping them. So in other words, Christians will say, let no one judge you for not keeping the Sabbath. Let no one judge you for not keeping the feasts, because now we have Messiah.
Stop right there. Mr. John Lawson with Kingdom Seekers. He's correct. Remember, I was as a messianic when I was a messianic. Well, it's been years ago. Those 20 years. He's right. That was the typical Christian, your Sunday keeping Christian point of view for Colossians 2:16 through 17. I remember as a messianic, I was well trained as a young man on how to get past that Christian argument. Oh, you're not supposed to judge me because I'm eating pork or because I'm not keeping the Sabbath. And of course, I would throw, one of them was Matthew 5:17. That was the main one. Or there were various arguments. Paul's talking about Talmud, or just it's one thing or another. But I'm familiar with the messianic, with the Torah keeping position on how to bypass that with the Christian. The problem is, and I'm not afraid to say this, Christians out there, they don't have their sword sharpened. They don't have the whole armor on. They come to the right conclusion at the end of the day with Colossians 2:16 through 17. However, though, in their attempt to explain to the Torah keeping, or those that desire to be teachers of the law that confidently affirm they know what they're saying, they don't handle their sword, the sword of Yahweh, properly. They don't have that their loins girded with truth. They just don't have that full armor. So then it just compounds the problem and makes the Torah teaching, those that desire to be teachers of the law, think, yep, see, in other words, it gets the Christian backpedaling, and it just makes, in other words, this stuff spreads like gangrene. That's why I'm here to help, okay, and do the best I can, hopefully, Yahweh willing. But yes, he's right. That's usually how the Christians interpret that. The problem is they just don't know how to rebuttal that right. The thing is, the law of Moses, again, never went to the Gentiles. Amos 3 establishes that very clear as day. You only have I known. You of all the, in other words, so we got to find first with those that desire to be teachers of the law, the Torah teachers out there that will keep telling Christians you have to do that. They fail to show where in the sacred scriptures does it say that the law of Moses goes to people outside of the 12 tribes of Israel, that Yahweh specifically says in Amos 3, you only have I known. Can two walk together unless they have agreed? That's the key. Otherwise, it's like Paul says, it's unlawful use of the law. We know the law is good if a man use it lawfully. Otherwise, that's not lawful use. It's just not lawful use. It's that specific. So the onus fall. That was a mistake we made as messianics. In other words, that's where the Christian, if they knew they had their sword sharpened, they could easily rebuttal. But yeah, that's usually the position of the typical Christian out there, and that's why I'm hoping this will also help Christians sharpen those swords up to understand. Hey, don't let any of these men that desire to be teachers of the law lead you astray on it. I think what John's going to do right now is he's going to go to the Torah observant response, which this is actually one of the responses right here.
Now, the Torah observant response to this is that we argue Paul was not abolishing or speaking against Yahweh's food laws, feasts, or Sabbath, because the surrounding context of all of Colossians here is focusing on not letting the traditions of man-made regulations, Greek philosophies, and so much more be a hindrance on you. Don't let that judge you, okay? So it's Paul's is defending the believers who were keeping the Sabbath, who were keeping the food laws, okay, and were being attacked by this mixed multitude in Colossae, saying, you shouldn't eat or drink or whatnot. So the shadow language does not also mean that it's abolished, but it means that it's an observance that points to Messiah. It's a current and future event. So we'll get into all that, guys, but that is the rebuttal to that popular argument by that's one of the rebuttals. One of the things that, again, Torah observant, or men that desire to be teachers of the law, that confidently affirm they know what they're saying,
That's one of the things that they'll pull out. Again, they'll say, here's the key word: context. And again, me personally, when I hear that word context, I just go, ugh. And the reason why is because, again, in my youth, those 20 years, I used that word so much on Christians. Again, I was like kingdom seekers. I was on that side at one time, kind of like Paul. Paul, in other words, yeah, I'm well acclimated with that. Now Yahweh's showing me, boy, yeah, I'm a little bit ashamed because how many people did I hurt or maybe led astray? Context. Again, you hear that. The reason why I started this video out about hypocrisy is because you'll see as the video goes on, Kingdom Seekers, the hypocrisy really shows. It just does. And that's where, again, it turns into doctrines of demons. It becomes a wisdom of this world, and that's exactly what Paul is trying to explain here. With that being said and done, yeah, there's nothing wrong with context, but it is not the wisdom that we speak in a mystery. We'll get to that in just a moment, though.
By Christians. Did you have any thoughts so far?
Just the quick thought that the non-Torah observant reading, the apologetic reading, or the traditional reading of these two verses really hinges upon a couple of things. One, not considering what these two lines are doing within a larger rhetorical argument, within a rhetorical situation that Paul is speaking into, and thus using that ignoring of the context to insert a different narrative and then associate words within the context, using very like to then say to cue people into that narrative that they're inserting into the passage, and that's why it apologetically this type of interpretation and this method is very potent. And then the second part is that there's a bald assertion being made, and that bald assertion has to do with who's making the judgments and to what are the judgments being directed at. And that's what this interpretation hinges upon. The interpretation hinges on that who is making the judgments are there's a variety of culprits. Usually it's Jews. But it's just Jews are always the problem, apparently. Yep. And so anything having to do in the context of judging, and then we see some things that are tied to the law of Moses. Oh, it's got to be Jews. Yep. The more charitable, I would say, to at least modern scholarship view is to say that, well, there are pagan ascetics and Gnostic things going on here, but it's a mixture of those and Jewish legalism, and we'll see this in Solberg's thing. We're just going to insert that. It's like they have to have something to do with it. I mean, they have to be in there somewhere for this framework to stick. So we're just going to insert them in there baldly, but without really any contextual evidence towards that, and that's how it's going to happen. And so that's the two things that I would bring up is one, ignoring rhetorical structure and a rhetorical flow of an argument, taking a couple of lines and then using those lines as an inroad to import a framework.
Yeah.
I'll stop right there, Jared, with refining exegetics. Again, my superior, again, I'm not a smarter guy than me. But I totally disagree with him. Again, what I'm using is the two-edged sword from James 3:13 through 18. In other words, am I hearing wisdom, earthly wisdom, or am I hearing wisdom from above? First of all, the reason why I say that is because of this. He mentioned context, the context of Colossians. Also, the rhetorical argument that Paul is making in the book of Colossians, rhetorical structure, the rhetorical flow, things like that. Let's just real briefly. I'm not saying that I agree 100%. I'm just going to show you, for example, when we take a look and just simply look, what is the rhetorical, or what is the context of the book of Colossians? What is the rhetorical argument? For example, the context of the book of Colossians. The book of Colossians is a Pauline epistle written by the Apostle Paul. By the way, I didn't write this. This is just all, scholarship. Google this stuff up. Just do your homework on this. The quote unquote experts. Okay. The book of Colossians is a Pauline epistle written by the Apostle Paul while in prison, likely in Rome around 60 to 62, which I agree. Yeah, the Colossians is one of the older books that Paul has yet to visit the Colossian brethren in Colossae, which is true. I do believe it was written between 60 and 62 CE to the assembly in Colossae, a city in Asia Minor. The core context involves addressing a heresy or a false teaching that was undermining the sufficiency of Yahshua the Messiah by encouraging believers to adopt a mixture of legalism, mysticism, and asceticism. Now, when it's talking about legalism, it is talking about the law of Moses, okay? But a mixture of these things, legalism, mysticism, and asceticism. You could even throw in here, even though it doesn't state that, Gnosticism. Okay, this is what most of the experts are telling you is the based off, again, the author, the audience, all this stuff. This is pretty much the context of the book of Colossians. Okay, according to the opinion of men. All right, theologians, all that stuff. When I read that, I pretty much agree with it. It is a mixture because there's a lot of things that we just don't have enough details in the book of Colossians. Okay, and there's things that we do have plenty of context. The thing is, are we using partiality and are we being hypocrites? Okay. First of all, as this gentleman Jared mentioned, let me just back up. I don't want to take anything out of his or misquote what he was saying.
Culprits. Usually it's Jews. Jews are always the problem, apparently. Yep. And so
again, that's one of the things he's saying, that there are scholars or theologians that will assert that the book of Colossians, it's a mixture. Again, like I just showed you on the screen, and I do believe, it probably is. I'm doing that just to be impartial. Honestly, I think it was, but this gentleman Jared on here to assert that as if though, well, they're just adding because it has to be the Jews, it has to be law of Moses. That's far-fetched there. The context of Acts 15:1 shows us it was, who was it? It was men from James, from Judea, men that desire to be teachers of the law, that confidently affirm they know what they're saying, but they don't know what they're saying, going up to Antioch, which is 300 miles north of Jerusalem, in a Gentile land, and telling the newbies that they got to keep, that they have to get cut according to the custom of Moses. Okay, and then this, by the time this gets down to Jerusalem, when the believing Pharisees hear that, we see in Acts 15 and Acts 15:5 that they rose up. See, this is why I was saying, if you make that wrong turn back there, then this begins to get worse. It spreads like gangrene. That's what Paul's trying to say. Shun these profane blasphemy. They're going to spread like gangrene, and it does. And then dominoes start to fall. Okay. The context shows us that it is legalizers, men that desire to be teachers of the law. These believing Pharisees rose up and said it is necessary for the Gentile newbies, including in Colossae, including in Galatians, which is the context of Galatians, okay, in Ephesus, it's all over the place, that they also have to keep the law of Moses. So, when you look at the book of Galatians, okay, Galatia, the assembly of Galatia is also in Asia Minor, just like Colossians is. The entire book of Galatians is pretty much Paul calling out, and you'll see that in just a moment. Men that desire to be teachers of the law of Moses. Oh, foolish Galatians, who bewitched you? Did you hear that? Did you receive the law? Did you receive the Spirit by the keeping of the law of Moses, or by the hearing of faith? Whose faith is Paul getting in? Peter's. Okay, not because Peter was becoming a Gnostic, not because Peter was turning to the temple of Diana of the Ephesians. No, because this was about the law of Moses. So the context clearly shows, and it's kind of obvious, that the book of Colossians may not be entirely about Jews, believing Jews, men of the circumcision party, believing Pharisees, that want the brethren in Colossae to keep the law of Moses. That's not far-fetched, just common sense. That is the contextualization of the time period. So for Jared to assert that, I'm like, I'm sensing partiality already, and that's like, no, that's no. Remember, the wisdom from above has no partiality and no hypocrisy in it. So I don't know how he came to that conclusion to think that, but it's kind of obvious.
About the 15th minute of his empty deceit according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirit of Colossians 2, 16 and 17, is about not letting any sort of Gnostic Greek philosophies pass judgment on you. The answer is within verse 8, Colossians 2:8. See to it that no one takes you captive by what? Philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Messiah. Right there it tells you, Paul's saying, don't let these Greek philosophical Gnostics come in and tell you what you can and can't do according to their tradition. In parentheses, I put here that Solberg skips this verse. He does bring it up about the 15th minute of his 30-minute video, but when it's very important to bring it up in his introduction, he skips it actually, in order to maybe present his argument a little stronger. But Yahweh's law is never seen as, quote, human tradition or elemental spirits of the world. So this is obviously a letter to the Colossians saying don't let these traditions get to you. He's not saying don't let the law get to you. He's not speaking about the law here.
I'm stopping right there. And again, partiality or hypocrisy. From what I'm understanding from Kingdom Seekers, remember the book of Colossians, we see it's 4 chapters long. Am I understanding that the entire book of Colossians hinges upon one verse, Colossians 8, verse 9? If that's what I'm getting, maybe I'm wrong, but is the entire context of the book of Colossians based off of one verse, which is Colossians 2:8? Is that how context works? I personally, I don't like to go that route, because we speak wisdom in a mystery. We First Corinthians 2:6. a wisdom not of this world, nor the rule. Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. But if that's what they're insinuating, or if that's what Kingdom Seekers is insinuating, it's like, isn't that what you're accusing Solberg of doing? In other words, yeah. So I'm just noticing that. But with all that being said and done, let's just take in consideration also that contextualization, context, is a philosophy of men. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it is a philosophy of men. Okay, again, you can see that. Just to give you one example, I can show you numerous of them. Contextualism in epistemology, again, you can see this is a philosophy of men. Paul is warning us about that right off the bat. Now, is that what Paul was referring to in Colossians 2:8? This is where things get dicey here. Okay, because I understand what exegetics is. I understand what I understand what people that believe in that really dig deep into exegetics and things like that. I understand what they would say. Well, you got to understand the Second Temple period, Judaism at the time, the culture. I understand that. However, though, Hebrews 4:12, the word of Yahweh is active and alive. It transcends us this small period of time. It is active and alive. It is inspired. Okay, Paul doesn't even realize how inspired. Even he would agree on this. So the Bible is active and alive, meaning even today, it transcends a small 200-300 year period. So when Paul's writing this, it is very, 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 very probable that the context is also applying to people today that are quick to use context. Context, because which is what a lot of these, and again, the problem with that is when you go over to 1 Corinthians 2:6, as a matter of fact, back up over here, to get a little bit of context of Colossians, just to show you a little bit, Colossians 1:9, beginning in Colossians 1, verse 9, for this cause we also, since the day we heard, do not cease to pray and make request for you, that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, to walk worthily of Yahshua, to all pleasing, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of Yahweh. Notice you're going to see knowledge of Yahweh, knowledge, spiritual wisdom, which is also going to lead to the suspicion, is he talking about Gnostics? Which I understand. In fact, I think this gentleman Jared's going to bring that up. I understand. I'm even saying, yeah, there's a possibility. Nowhere in the book of Colossians, however, do we see any mention of Gnosticism. You don't see the word mystics, mysticism. You don't see asceticism, the word in here. You don't. It's inserted in there based off of what people perceive, understand that, which is the wisdom of men. But nowhere in Colossians does Paul say, well, I'm talking about asceticism, I'm talking about Gnostics, I'm talking about mystics here. You don't find that word at all. So again, it takes the, I'm not saying, again, I'm not me, like I said earlier, I do believe that this letter has a mixture. Paul is referring to a mixture of men that desire to be teachers of the law of Moses, also dealing with Gnostics in here, possibly even ascetics, possibly mysticism. I'm in agreement with that. But to assert that it's preposterous, in other words, to assert that, Solberg is no. It's just no. The context is clear. Look, any man that says that it's not there, like I said, Acts 15:1, Galatians, that's just flat out doctrines of demons. It's hypocrites. I'll tell you flat out right now, because the evidence is overwhelming. And you'll see that in a moment. But getting back to contextualism, now that Paul has already established, we're talking about knowledge and spiritual wisdom, not Greek wisdom, spiritual wisdom. At least so far in chapter 1. That's where you got to go to 1 Corinthians. And 1 Corinthians 1, or I'm sorry, 1 Corinthians 2. 1 Corinthians 2, 6. 1 Corinthians 2, 6. We speak wisdom, however, among them that are full grown, yet a wisdom not of this world. What is the context for wisdom that is not of this world? What does the scholarship say about wisdom that's not of this world? No, that's scholarship goes out the door. Nor are the rulers of this world, who are coming to nothing. But we speak Yahweh's wisdom in a mystery. Is the context of a book a mystery? So then how can scholarship say what this is the problem. Here's the problem right here. And we already know Paul is talking about, if Paul is clearly saying we speak wisdom in a mystery, then how can any scholar or a person that is deals with exegetics and all that, how on the world can they say this is what Paul meant? They can't. They cannot do that, because we speak wisdom in a mystery. Paul is clearly giving you the context in advance. Even the wisdom that has been hidden. When we say context, what is the context of wisdom that is hidden? Well, how do we find? Well, in order to find context, we need to know the location, it's hidden. The time, it's hidden. The events, it's hidden. It's hidden. Unless you are full grown and you speak in the Spirit. See, scholarship doesn't like that. Exegetics, they're like, oh, I'm sorry, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. Which Yahweh foreordained before the worlds to our glory, which none of the rulers of this world have known. A lot of these rulers at this time were receiving a Hellenistic education and Greek education. Today's modern scholars, they go to universities that teach what? Hellenistic culture, Greek wisdom. And yet we're going to let scholars come in here. No, that's is what Paul is warning you all over in Colossians 2:8. This is why that verse is active and alive, and it applies today. And this is why right away when I hear people start saying, well, you got to put things in proper context right away, so we got to bring in the philosophy of men and their vain deceit, which is what Paul is warning about. So, which none of the rulers of this world have known, for had they known it, they would not have impaled the sovereign of glory. Who impaled our Savior Yahshua the Messiah? Gnostics? Mystics? No. Men that desire to be teachers of the law, that confidently affirm, give us Barabbas. Yeah, that's the context. That is the context, which none of the rulers of this world have known. For had they known it, they would not have impaled the sovereign glory. Okay? But as it is written, things which I saw not. What is the context of things that I saw not? And ear heard not. And what is the exegetics of things that I saw not? And see, they don't like that. They don't like that. They want observation, and that's not how this works. Verse 10, but to us Yahweh revealed them through scholarship, through proper exegetics, through the Spirit. For the Spirit searches all things, yes, the deep things of Yahweh. For who among men knows the things of a man except the spirit of the man which is in him? Even so, none know the things of Yahweh except the Spirit of Yahweh, which we know the knowledge and wisdom of Yahweh is Yahshua the Messiah. Go into 1 Corinthians 1. 1 Corinthians 1, verse 18. 1 Corinthians 1:18. For the word of the stake is to them that perish foolishness. 1 Corinthians 1:18. Verse 19. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. Scholarship. Proper exegetics. The rhetorical argument and structure. Yeah, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. And the discernment of the discerning will I bring to nothing. So when I start hearing right off the bat, exegetics, modern scholarship, rhetorical structure, the rhetorical, that takes discernment. that takes discernment. If he is going to bring the discernment, if he's going to bring the discerning or the discernment of the discerning to nothing, then why are we putting our faith and our trust in scholarship, exeget? No, that's not the context. That is not the context. Paul, this is Paul writing this. No. Verse 20, where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this world? High school dropout, by the way. No college education. Ex-gambling addict of 23 years. Thank Yahweh that he brought me to my knees out of that. I failed him in so many ways. 2 felonies. Those are my dark years. I'm just throwing out my resume. That's all I'm doing, just throwing out my resume, okay? Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this world? Has Yahweh not brought the wisdom of this world? Has Yahweh not made the wisdom of this world foolish? For seeing that in the wisdom of Elohim, the world through its wisdom did not know Yahweh. It was Yahweh's good pleasure through the foolishness of the preaching to save them that believe. Seeing the Jews ask for signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach the Messiah in peril. To Jews a stumbling block, and Gentiles foolishness. But to them that are called both Jews and Greek, the Messiah is the power of Yahweh and the wisdom of Yahweh. Because the foolishness of Yahweh is wiser than modern scholarship and men, and the weakness of Yahweh is stronger than men. For behold your calling, brethren, that not many of you were wise. Modern scholarship, Professor so-and-so, refining exegetics and things like that. No. For behold your calling, brethren, that not many were wise after the flesh. Again, high school dropout. No college education. Okay, I'm just being honest. Bus driver. Or was at one time. Not many mighty, not many noble are called. But Yahweh chose the foolish things of this world that he might put to shame them that are wise. Does it show here that he chose modern scholarship? People that write books on exegetics. Does it show that that's what Yahweh chooses to shame the wise? No, it's not what it says. That's not what it says. And Yahweh chose the weak things of this world, that he might put to shame the things that are strong, and the base things of this world, that the things that are despised did Yahweh choose. Yes, and the things that are not, that he might bring to nothing the things that are. You mean like modern scholarship, exegetics, the rhetorical argument of Colossians, the rhetorical structure, the things that are, but he's going to bring them to naught. So then what are we doing here? This is all talking about spiritual wisdom and what Yahweh chooses to establish his wisdom in a mystery. This is why Kingdom Seekers, right off the bat, I don't see how. What is the exegetics of this here? I mean, seriously. No, that's not what's going on. No. Again, I'm just here to help out, honestly. But no. This is where I got a total. Again, same thing. Same thing with R.L. Solberg. He's a scholar too. Same thing. I'm just throwing that out. This is walking right into that snare. My friend John Lawson, it's exactly what's going on. No, it's active and alive, and it applies today as well.
Again, I bring up certain words like Greek philosophy, mysticism, and asceticism, so I thought it'd be really helpful to define these terms real quick to help out anybody who's new. I'm just going to enlarge it real quick. Asceticism is the belief that denying the body makes a person more holy. This includes strict self-denial, fasting beyond what Scripture requires, and avoiding certain foods and harsh treatment of the body. We find this in Colossians 2:23. A good example, I guess, would be in modern society of people almost making you feel guilty for eating breakfast or something, and saying that if you skip breakfast, you'll be more spiritual. Or someone who could be a very, very passionate, legalistic, say, vegetarian or vegan, and almost holding it over you like, if you eat meat, you're not as spiritual. So that would maybe fall under asceticism. There's a lot of angel veneration.
Stop right there. That's a good point. Again, you're showing here up here asceticism. Again, I just want to make sure I repeat myself. I'm not saying that passage that you showed right there, Colossians 1:23, is not talking about asceticism. I'm not saying that. It probably is. It probably is. Honestly, remember, this is as I said, the context. It's mixed. Okay, it's mixed. It can be. On the same token, we also have to understand that there's a possibility. This is not talking about asceticism. It's also talking about people that are teaching the law of Moses. I'm saying the possibility is there, and the reason why I'm saying that, without insulting intelligence, we understand the law of Moses. Again, just to show you, to give it a little more context, Colossians 2:20 through 23. Colossians 2:20 through 23. If you died with the Messiah from the rudiments of this world, why, as living in the world, do you subject yourselves to ordinances? So Paul's asking, they're already subjecting themselves to ordinances. Handle not, taste not, nor touch. All which things are to perish with the using, after the precepts and doctrines of men. As we see here, when a woman has if someone touches a woman who's on her period, he becomes unclean. Though this is part of it. Handle not, taste not, don't touch. Can't touch that woman. That this is falling under the context as well. Okay, I'm just giving you an example of law of Moses. This is why I don't understand why Jared is acting like as if though this is like far-fetched or just adding context. No, absolutely not. Whoever touches any dead body, again, touch not, handle not. All right here, what's Paul saying? Handle not, nor taste, nor touch, which is another way for taste. Again, eating, the same thing. Nor touch, you could even look up that Greek word for taste. Again, all right there, that is part of the context. Okay? The context. So, again, I'm not saying that passage has nothing to do with asceticism. No. What I'm saying is to assert, if that's what you're doing, that this is why it has to do with asceticism and it has nothing to do with the law of Moses. No, that's where you're wrong. And I'm showing you right now, clear as day, that's not what the context is. In other words, I don't see where it says we're talking about asceticism, but I understand it could be. But at the same token, I don't see where he's saying law of Moses, even though in verse 16 he specifically said things that have nothing to do with asceticism, but the law of Moses, Sabbath, new moon, feast days. So again, we can't insult intelligence here, because then that becomes wisdom with partiality and wisdom filled with hypocrisy, and we know now that falls under demonic wisdom and confusion. It's not. It's coming from the other side, and that's the problem. You don't want to play ball with that other side. That's again just putting that lightly.
Within this Greek philosophical world, many promoted the worship.
Sorry to back up real quick. Sorry
fall
about
under asceticism. There's a lot of angel veneration within this Greek philosophical world.
Stop right there, humbly. No, you're wrong. That's not true. Angel veneration. No, Paul's talking about worshiping of angels, not angel veneration. The wording right there, again. Come on, Kingdom Seekers. Again, you can't criticize Christians for no. Greeks did not worship angels. The whole concept of angels originates from the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, going to Christianity, okay, into Islam. But as far as the Greeks are concerned, no. They had their pantheon, their gods, okay. But as far as the concept of angels, no, that was not part of the Greek philosophy of worship. No, that comes from Your law of Moses. That comes from the Torah. That's where that stuff, which is real, true, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that angels don't exist. No. Which is true. But right there, again, that's doing what the Christians do, John. You're bringing in something that is not true at all. I'm surprised Jared didn't cut you off right there. No. The Greeks did not believe in angels. They had messengers, but those messengers were deemed as gods. I'll give you an example. Real quick. You go over to Acts 14. This is all by way. This is all. Remember, the Holy Spirit does this. It's not me. I have no power. Paul and Barnabas are considered as gods here. And when the crowd saw what Paul had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in Lycaonian, "The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men." Barnabas they called Zeus or Jupiter, and Paul they called Hermes, Mercury. Okay, Hermes was a messenger, but he was considered also a god, not an angel. Notice how it's even saying the gods, plural. Okay? Because it's talking about Jupiter and Hermes, Zeus and Hermes. Okay? Hermes was not an angel, even though he was considered like a messenger and speaker. So again, I'm showing you in the Greek philosophy, Greek pantheon, angels, the worshiping of angels did not exist. So right there, you have just saying, Kingdom Seekers, you got to strike that out in order to stay with wisdom that is from above, and understand that false teaching that you just said right now is incorrect. No, the Greeks did not worship angels. Okay, so we got to find out. So is Paul talking about Greek wisdom and philosophy? This is why the context shows this is a mixture. This is why Jared is wrong in his assessment. Again, showing that partiality there. No. This is not talking. I notice he's not cutting you off too, because that's just a fact. No, the Greeks did not worship angels.
He promoted the worship of or special access to angels and spiritual intermediaries. Again, this is found in Colossians 2:18. Going on, mystical visions. Certain teachers claim deeper spiritual knowledge through visions and supernatural experiences. And finally, in the ancient world, many believed that physical matter was inferior or corrupt, and that spiritual purity came through self-denial, secret knowledge, or mystical experiences. So this is the kind of crowd that's coming in and giving the Colossians a hard time.
So could you go back to that last slide real quick, just to bring it up? A quick thing on the angel veneration, or what some translation would render that phrase as basically religion of angels. Some commentators like to try to sneak in the Jewish thing by saying, well, the law of Moses was mediated by angels. That says that a few places in the New Testament. Ergo, this must be Jews inserting cultic rituals to the mediating angels. It's like we need, not so fast. No, Gnostic ascetic groups were. There's a couple things that clue us in on sort of the ascetic, the pagan or Gnostic apparatus that's troubling the Colossians here, and that is Paul's frequent motif of wisdom in Colossians throughout his letter. And one of those things is he speaks of the fullness of wisdom being found in Christ, and that he's filled with the fullness. The Greek word there is pleroma. Well, if you know about Gnostic sort of philosophy and such, pleroma plays a central point of focus. It's this idea of the fullness of everything. God is essentially this fullness, but you can't directly conceptualize or understand the fullness except by departing from the body, everything physical, and ascending into various different levels of mystical archons. Is the Greek word that's associated with this, and these archons are overseeing these archons are these principles, these authorities in the heavenlies. And so the Gnostics were about departing from the flesh through ascetic practices and such in order to ascend into these different levels to reach the pleroma. It was to escape the material and saving gnosis. The Gnostic that comes from gnosis. This saving gnosis comes in regards to some have this pneumatikos, this spark, and it causes them to leave the physical body and return to the pleroma. That's all at play here. And Paul is riffing off of that. He's subverting that. He's saying, no, the fullness, the pleroma, is found in Messiah, bodily.
So it sounds
I'll stop
very...
right there. Yeah, Jared, again, wow, the partiality showing. He asked Kingdom Seekers to put that screen back up, and then he begins to go back to this angel veneration to comment on it. And he mentions that there are those that will assert that since the law of Moses was mediated by angels, and it was mediated by angels, we see that in Galatians, that Paul is trying to assert that this is involving the law of Moses, which I agree. Then he says, not so fast, not so fast. Then he goes explaining off on Gnosticism. I am astonished because this is that wisdom filled with partiality and hypocrisy. There was no mention from Jared to John, not so fast. Greeks do not worship angels. And Jared says nothing. Absolute. That's called wisdom with partiality and hypocrisy. I'll say this again. Greeks did not worship angels. This is why Jared is beginning to show his partiality. And again, this is showing me it doesn't matter how much scholarship, it doesn't matter how much exegetics you got. If you have, like Jacob says, lie not, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom is not a wisdom that comes down from above, but it's earthly, it is sensual, it is demonic. Okay? Again, there is no partiality for the wisdom from above, and there is no hypocrisy in the wisdom from above. He should have also stopped John by saying, excuse me, that's not correct. No, the Greek philosophy does not worship angels. That is from the Abrahamic faith. That's where that all originated from, but no mention of that. But he's quick to try to assert Gnosticism for the worshiping of angels. Again, but he's already kind of showing his true colors over here when he earlier in the video in other words, I'm beginning to sense nothing but partiality from this gentleman Jared here. And again, let it show for the record. No, that is not correct. Now, let's look at that passage. Let's take a look at Colossians 2:18. In context, what it's saying, Colossians 2:18, let no man rob you of your prize by voluntary humility and worshiping of the angels, dwelling in the things which he has seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. First thing is first, we notice it says the worshiping of angels in here, but in verse 18, it begins by saying, let no man rob you of your prize by voluntary humility. First of all, what does Paul mean by that? Let no man rob you of your prize. I notice Kingdom Seekers isn't addressing that context, and neither is this gentleman Jared here. Now, one of the things that they did bring up is, first of all, who's doing the judging? Who is judging the Colossian brethren? When Paul is saying in verse 16, let no man judge you therefore in meat or in drink or in respect of a feast day or new moon or Sabbath. Remember, those are all things which are definitely law of Moses. That's not talking about the Greek pantheon. Okay, that's not talking about the Gnostics. Okay, that's not what that's talking about. That's law of Moses. Okay, so in order to show partiality here, what they're going to do is they're going to bring up, and I hear this argument a lot. It's because we used to say this too back in the day. It's pagan family members and pagan friends. Remember the Colossians, they were pagans. They came out of paganism, and that's who's doing the judging. That's who's doing the judging. And Paul's just simply saying, don't let your family members that are still pagan, don't let your friends that are still pagans out there judge you according to, because they're keeping the kosher laws now, they're keeping the Sabbath, they're keeping the feast days. That's what Paul means. That's the context of it. So then what does Paul say in verse 18? Let no man rob you of your prize. Well, let's go over to not philosophy, not vain deceit of men. Let's go over to Yahshua the Messiah, like Paul says in Colossians 2:8-9. So let's go over to Matthew 5. In Matthew chapter 5, Yahshua the Messiah records this. The Messiah is going to tell us in Matthew chapter 5 about that prize that Paul's talking about. And let no man rob you of your prize. In Matthew chapter 5, we find what that's all about. Again, let's search the scriptures daily to see if these things are so. Because we know the knowledge and wisdom of the Spirit of Yahweh is Joshua the Messiah. Matthew chapter 5. This is what we find. Matthew chapter 5, beginning in Matthew 5:10. Matthew 5 verse 10. Blessed are they that have been persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when men shall reproach you. You mean judge us? Judge me? Yeah. Blessed are you when men shall reproach you and persecute you. You mean like judge me? Yeah. And persecute you. And say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. You mean like judge me? Yes. Rejoice. Be happy about it. Rejoice. And be very glad when people judge me. Yeah, be very glad. For great is your reward. You mean my prize, my award, my reward? Yes, great is your reward in heaven. For so persecuted they the prophets that were before you. Now, let's go to Colossians 2:18. So, all right, let's start at verse 16. Colossians 2:16. Let no man judge you therefore in meat or in drink or in respect of a feast day or new moon or a Sabbath. Now, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body of the Messiah. Let no man rob you of your prize by a voluntary humility and worshiping of the angels, dwelling in the things which he has seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. First of all, if the context of verse 16 is talking about pagan family members and pagan friends that are judging them because they're keeping the law of Moses, then why is Paul robbing them of their prize? Because if he's telling the Colossians, don't let your pagan family members and your pagan and your pagan friends that you left behind, don't let them judge you. Because they're saying, what are you keeping kosher for? What are you doing? Don't let them do that to you. No, that's not what Yahshua said. No, let them do that to you. Rejoice and be very glad. Yahshua doesn't say, yeah, don't let them do that to you. Because no, that's not what the Messiah said. Now, this is where some men will try to bring in their exegetics and their philosophy and their vain deceit. No. And not after the Messiah. See how this works? No, we preach Yahshua the Messiah and Paul. We're sticking with what the Master said. Now read what Paul is saying. Let no man rob you of your prize. Paul is not trying to rob them. Paul's the one that said suffer hardship. That's the context. That is the context. Go over to Matthew 5 to show that. So clearly, and we know that the Greeks did not, the pagan pantheon doesn't worship angels, so this whole Greek idea is kind of fading off here, and I'm still not dismissing it. I'm being impartial on that, but I sense the partiality big time. And as Paul says, don't let no one capture you and try to act as if though with their vain philosophy and their deceit here, with contextualization, exegetics, and try to just act like the law of Moses has nothing to do with this. That's not what the context is showing. As a matter of fact, I just noticed humbly, I'm saying this, Jared and this and my friend John here, they just kind of brushed over that whole context of what does he mean by let no man rob you of your prize. Now, if that's talking about men that are desiring to be teachers of the law of Moses, and Paul is saying don't let them judge you so as to rob you of your prize, because they're trying to tell you you have to keep the Mosaic law. Oh, that changes everything. Now we understand what Paul means when he says let no man rob you of your prize, because that is robbing you of your prize. You can't brush over that context and then talk about R.O. Solberg. See that's wisdom with take by the same measure you judge, that measure will be judged to you, gentlemen. This is Yahshua the Messiah. We don't need exegetics here. We don't need just flat out right there. It's just pretty obvious right there. So let no man rob you of your prize by a voluntary humility and a worshiping of the angels, which wasn't the Greek pantheon. And this is why I did say that bus driver analogy. When you miss that wrong turn, this is just me through the Spirit dwelling in things which he has seen. I was in Joppa, on the top of the roof there with Simon the Tanner, and I had a vision. It had nothing to do with animals. It had nothing to do with animals, even though we're created in the image of Elohim. Even though the only place in all the Bible that records Peter opened his mouth and said, the only place, Peter speaks over 90 times in all the Bible, only one place that records Peter opened his mouth and said happens to be Acts 10. Again, I won't get off that subject, but you see, what do you think Paul's saying? Vainly puffed, again, dwelling in worshiping of the angels, knowing that the law was the law was mediated by angels, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind, and not holding fast the head, from whom all the body being supplied and knit together through the joints and bands increases with the increase of Yahweh. I'm shocked. I'm shocked to see how much context, and I'll try to throw this quickly out there. My friends here are just throwing out the door. Did we forget that in Exodus 23? In Exodus 23, did we forget who took the children of Israel the rest of the way? Was it Yahweh or was it an angel? Exodus 23. Exodus chapter 23, verse 20. Exodus 23, 20. Remember, the book of Leviticus is not, in other words, the laws of Leviticus have not been given yet. Leviticus 11 has not been given yet. Deuteronomy 14 has not been given yet. At the time this is happening in Exodus 23, verse 20. Behold, I sent an angel before you to keep you by the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Take heed before him and listen to his voice. What about your voice, Yahweh? No. His voice. Provoke him not. He is a hothead. This one's a hothead. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions. For my name is in him. What is Yahweh telling Moses here? Behold, I send an angel. An angel? Now, the Greek pantheon doesn't worship angels. That's not where this came from. This is the Greek Empire didn't even exist at this time. See, you can't bring the Greeks into this. That's false teaching. That's not even historically accurate. All right, an angel's going to take you the rest of the way, guys. You mean that whoever was talking to us in the wilderness? Mm-hmm. You mean whoever's telling us that we can't eat that and that later on? Mm-hmm. Did you offer me sacrifices and burnt offerings in the wilderness those 40 years, O house of Israel? Apparently they didn't. An angel will take you the rest of the way. He's going to have power of attorney. My name is in like power of attorney. Like power of attorney. And then that angel's going to take it until you get to Yahshua Messiah. Thank you, Tutor. Thank you, Tutor. But all authority now has been given to him. All authority. See, are we still worshiping those angels, handing out those laws in Leviticus that had the power of attorney? Yes, Yahweh is one. We know Yahweh is one. This is what Yahweh is showing here. Behold, I send an angel before you to keep you by the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Take heed before him and listen to his voice. The angel's voice. For my name is in him. This is why the law was mediated. Well, Leviticus 11, the law the angel gave out. So, this is what do you think got Stephen the martyr stoned? Did you offer? He's quoting with Amos, saints, right? Gentlemen. Context. No. Also, we go over to the book of Judah. In the book of Judah, and this one, I'll just try to keep this one short because the insult to intelligence from a lot of these men that desire to be teachers of law. Judah 1:9, but Michael, an angel, Michael the archangel. Who's an angel? Michael the archangel is contending about the body of Moses with a fallen angel, the anointed cherub. So we got an archangel and a fallen angel arguing about the body of Noah. No. The body of Adam? No. The body of Abraham? No. Samson? Samuel? Eliah? No. Job? Isaiah? How about John the Baptist? No. King David? No. Yahshua over Moses. Why Moses? The law? Yeah. Why are two angels? Greek pantheon? No. Gnostics? No. Why are two angels disputing about the body of Moses? So what is the context of Colossians? Let's go over to Matthew 17, just to save time. Matthew 17. Yahshua Messiah goes up to the mountain over there by Caesarea Philippi, near Mount Hermon, where the Book of Enoch would expand on that. The B'nai Elohim, the whole 200 angels that come down. But again, there's a reason why. He's I don't want to make this video long again, so we'll just try to keep it simple. Go to Matthew 17. And he takes them up to that mount. And what do we find? He takes Peter and a few of the, not all of them, just a few of the fellows with him. And he's going to get transfigured. He's going to get transfigured right there where the events of Mount Hermon, right there, that vicinity where that whole thing for Genesis 6, 1 through 4 went down, the Nephilim, whole situation. Over in Matthew 17, what do we find? Matthew 17, verse 1. And after 6 days, Yahshua takes with him Peter and Jacob and John, his brother, and brings them up into a high mountain apart. And he was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun. What was Paul talking about in Colossians? What was Paul talking about in Colossians 2? That Yahshua was the head? That, we'll get to that in a minute. And his garments became white as the light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Eliah, the law and the prophets. Moses and Eliah talking with him. And Peter answered and said to Yahshua, Master, it is good for us to be here. If you will, I will make here 3 tabernacles for you. One for you, one for Moses, and one for Eliah. What's wrong with that? While he was yet speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And behold, a voice out of the cloud saying, excuse me. 3 heads on one body? No. 3 heads on one body? No. We already have, everything is already filled here. Excuse me, Peter, everything's already filled here. Arise, kill and eat. Oh, no, not so. Moses said, no, whoa. Behold, a bright cloud overshadowed him, just interrupts him, and said, This is my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. And when the disciples heard it, they fell on their face and were severely afraid. Can't have 3 heads on one body. You can't have 3 heads on one body. And Yahshua came and touched them and said, Arise and be not afraid. And lifting up their eyes, they saw no one. What happened to Moses? What happened to Eliah, the law? What happened to Leviticus 11? What arise, Peter, kill. Please. 10 years go by. Go to all the nations. 10 years. They got to go get Cornelius. Again, that's why I do this. This is why, if you miss that turn in the road, fellas, if you miss that turn in the road, you begin to this just goes downhill. Oh, this is context galore. Are we still worshiping angels, Peter? That angel over in Leviticus 11, did you offer me burnt offerings and sacrifice? Seriously. All authority has, we know the law is good if it's used law. See, again, no, this is the, by the way, where is he taking him at? Where is he at? At Caesarea Philippi, where the summit of Mount Hermon is, where the 200 fallen angels came down. That Sethite theory? No. Galatians 1. What is the context of Galatians 1? What is the context of Galatians 1? Galatians 1, what is Paul talking about? Galatians 1:6. I marvel that you're so quickly removing from him that called you in the grace of the Messiah to a different good tidings, which is not another. Only there are some that trouble you and would pervert the good tidings of the Messiah. But though we or an angel from heaven, what? Though we or an angel from heaven should preach to you any evangel other than that which we preach to you, let him be anathema, accursed. Whoa, Paul, what's going on here, Paul? Why would you say that? Why are you resisting Peter to his face? Because he stood condemned? If you, being a Jew, live as Gentiles do, and not as do the Jews, how do you compel the Gentiles to live as the Jews? I'm talking about Gnostics, not talking about mystics. He's not talking about the pagan pantheon. He's talking about men that desire to be teachers of the law of Moses. I mean, that's why I'm astonished at Jared. Like, huh? Are you kidding me? How could you even come to that conclusion? The province of Galatia, the assembly of Galatia, the province of Galatia is only about 250 miles, 300 miles away from Colossae. I mean, how is that not context? No, that's wisdom with partiality. So angels, mediated by angels. How can you? Not only that. Again, I didn't mean to get sidetracked with this gentleman, but not only that. But again, I still understand. I understand. By the way, no, Gnostics generally did not worship angels. Gnostics generally did not worship angels. Instead, they viewed them with suspicion of hostility in Gnosticism. The material world was created not by the true supreme God, but by a lesser. Again, that's how they believe. Flawed. Okay. In other words, I do understand what Jared is saying about the gnosis and about the escape, the archons, as he was stating. I understand. That's why I'm still saying I understand that what is being discussed in Colossians 2 can also include Gnostic teaching being involved, mysticism being involved, okay, and asceticism. I get it. But when I hear anyone try to show doctrines of demons and pretend like law of Moses and these legalizers, no, that's absurd. This is a person that is has a motive and is showing nothing but partiality, and that's automatically, as Jacob says, glory not and lie not against truth. Don't pull that one. That's not going to work. That wisdom does not come from above. It's not authorized. It's earthly. It doesn't matter how much scholarship and Torah you got. In other words, he sees what you got. No, that ain't going to work. That's not going to work. Now, with all that being said and done, because I did not want to make this video long, this one is for Kingdom Seekers. And again, I'm going to show you why. Wow. I was disappointed in this one, but again, I'm hoping this will help. I'm hoping this will. Hearing all of this, that what you guys are, what is being discussed on here. Now I got to ask Kingdom Seekers this. In your video on the book of Galatians, this is what you state in your introduction on the book of Galatians.
An introduction to the book of Galatians. If you've been a Torah observer for more than a day, you might have heard this question. Have you read Galatians? So let's get into Galatians, starting with an introduction. Here's the context of this letter. Galatians is written by the Apostle Paul roughly around 50 AD to the church of Galatia, which was located in Minor Asia. Today it's known as modern Turkey. The audience was mostly non-Jews, uncircumcised Gentiles, who accepted Yeshua as Messiah and used the Old Testament and the instructions of Paul to live out their faith. But a small sect of Jewish believers could not accept the idea that non-Jews, uncircumcised Gentiles, can be part of Israel. So they erroneously convinced these Gentile believers to become Jewish proselytes and to get circumcised and become a Jew in order to now say they are saved.
Now, I'll stop right there. Again, what you're stating here in the context of Galatians, that believing Jews, right? See, I mean, is Jared going to say, well, right away you got to blame those Jews? No. See, notice here, Kingdom Seekers, notice here, let's not insult intelligence. Yes, these were believing Jews. So why is it so far-fetched for a Christian? By the way, I'm just trying to help them out, but they still need to sharpen up those swords as Christians. Why are we playing these games by asking, well, Colossians, well, where does it say that you're talking about Jews? No, you can't do that. That's wisdom. Glory not and lie not against the truth, gentlemen. No. Here you can clearly see this is talking about men that desire to be teachers of the law of Moses, that confidently affirm they know what they're saying, but they don't know what they're saying. Okay? That's what the context, and by the way, there's only 300 miles distance between Galatia and Colossae. So, I mean, why is it, in other words, come on, fellas. Come on. That's wisdom filled with hypocrisy, confusion, and partiality. It's demonic wisdom. It's that simple. Okay? You're getting it here. So far, yeah, I'm in agreement. So far, you're right. You're hitting this right in the head.
So, in the Church of Galatia, you have two gospels running around. The first one is that you are saved by faith in Messiah Yeshua. And the second one is the false gospel, that you are saved through being a Jewish proselyte.
Now stop right there. You are correct. You have two gospels going around in the brethren of Galatia. Are we talking about Gnosticism here? No. Are we talking about Diana of the Ephesians in here? No. The Greek pantheon does not have a gospel. Let me repeat that. The Greek pantheon does not have a gospel. And no, they don't believe in angels. This is the context of Galatians. It is dealing with believing Jews that desire to be teachers of the law of Moses, that confidently affirm they know what they're saying, but they don't know what they're saying. Okay? That's what this subject matter has to do. And Paul defending faith. Okay, the faith of Yahshua, the Messiah. Okay, and also his apostleship, you see in just a moment. All right, just again, has nothing to do with pagan worship at all.
Converted to Judaism and to get circumcised. Acts 15 verse 1, Peter brings this issue up. It says, "And certain men came down from Judea and taught the brethren, unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved." Paul wrote to the Galatians, rebuking this false gospel, salvation by circumcision, which he called a different gospel. Galatians 1 verse 6. "I am astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who called you in the grace of Messiah, and are turning to a different gospel." Paul went on to write about salvation by faith alone, which was given to us through Abraham.
Now notice what Paul is saying in the context. He is astonished that you are so quickly deserting him who are called you in the grace of the Messiah and are turning to a different gospel. Does it say that they are turning to Gnosticism, asceticism, that they are returning back to their pagan ways? Diana the Ephesians, does it state? No, that is not the context. That is not the context. This is the context. So far, I'm 100% in agreement with what Kingdom Seekers are saying here.
And that circumcision or converting to Judaism is not what gets you saved. Galatians 2 verse 16. "Yet we know that a person is not justified, that is saved, by works of the law, but through faith in Yeshua Messiah." Paul wrote that you don't need circumcision in order to say that you're saved or that you are part of Israel. You received justification by faith, and once you are justified by faith in Yeshua as Messiah, you eventually will walk out the Torah, which is sanctification, which includes the outward sign of circumcision. Abraham was righteous by faith before he was ever circumcised.
That's
and
right.
So also,
and we know Greeks don't circumcise. The Greek pantheon doesn't circumcise. We know that Gnostics did not believe in circumcision. We're well aware of all that. Okay? We know that the Greek pantheon, the pagan religion that the Galatians left and are now believers in the Messiah, they didn't practice circumcision. So we know that this has nothing to do so far with the Galatians going back to their pagan ways. No, this has the entire context so far is about the Galatians. Oh, Galatians, who foolish Galatians, who bewitched you? Did you receive the Spirit by the keeping of the law of Moses or by the hearing of faith? That's the context.
Also, this applies to your own personal faith. You are already saved before circumcision. Once you are in, you will eventually walk out Torah as a sign of your salvation and as a sign of being part of Israel, including getting circumcised. But never claim that this work within Torah, that is circumcision, is what saved you. Here is a rough outline of the book of Galatians, chapter by chapter. There are 6 chapters total. Chapter 1 is Paul's salutation, his greeting. Chapter 2, Paul gives us the outline of the true gospel. Chapter 3 is an exhortation to the Galatians. You are sons of Abraham. Chapter 4 is exhortation concluded. You are sons by faith. Your status is by saying that you're in Messiah. Chapter 5 is rebuking the idea of salvation by circumcision, that is the false gospel, that you have freedom in Yeshua. He differentiates sanctification from justification. And finally, chapter 6 is final exhortation and his conclusion. We must know historical context in order to best understand Galatians, written by the Apostle Paul. And many of you already know, in Christianity, Galatians has been interpreted from a dispensational paradigm, presupposing that Paul was trying to do away with the Torah. But as a Torah observer in Messiah Yeshua, we approach Galatians from the angle of a first century Jewish paradigm. That is how you read Galatians, from a proper perspective. That is, to use proper hermeneutics. The letter of Galatians is not saying that the law was abolished.
We speak wisdom and a mystery, first of all. Kingdom seekers, this is where you get carried away in the philosophy of men. But so far, okay, so far I see what you're saying.
Or that keeping the Torah is a bad thing. This is not biblical. Understanding this is fundamental to reading Galatians and understanding Paul. Paul promotes keeping the Torah and is easily misread and misunderstood. So it's important we don't read the idea that the law was done away with into his text. I hope this introduction brings much.
Okay, and we'll stop right there. Now, as I finish up here, real quick, and you'll see the point I'm about to make here. I agree with just about everything that was said from Kingdom Seekers as far as the book of Galatians is concerned. Again, just for the record, just want to notate that down. Yep, I agree with just almost about everything they said. We see here, the book of Galatians is a passionate letter written by the Apostle Paul to the assemblies that he founded in the Roman province of Galatia, modern-day Turkey. He wrote to counter false teachers claiming Gentile Christians had to obey the law of Moses. They desired to be teachers of the law of Moses. Okay, these were not Gnostics. These were not. This was not the temple of Diana the Ephesians coming down trying to get them back into pagan worship. No. These were believing Jews trying to teach them another gospel, such as getting circumcised to be saved. Understanding the context of Galatians involves looking at a few key historical and theological components. The audience, the conflict, the threat to Paul, again, saying pretty much the same thing that my friends here at Kingdom Seekers were saying. Okay, just see we're all kind of in agreement on that for the most part. Okay. Now, we see Paul's arguments again, and I do, Galatians was written right around 50 CE, the Common Era, maybe about 10 years before Colossians. Okay. We find the key arguments here was the defense of the apostle, Paul's defense of his apostleship, chapters 1 and 2. Justification by faith. Oh, foolish, we're justified by works of faith, not works of the law of Moses. That's what that's all about, chapters 3 and 4. Oh, foolish Galatians, who bewitched you? The whole thing about the law of Moses is a tutor leading to faith, which is the Messiah, all that. No mention of Gnosticism, no mention of, are you going back to Diana the Ephesians? No mention of that. Freedom in the Spirit, chapters 5 and 6, we see it all. Again, no mention of the Galatians going back to their pagan ways anywhere in the anywhere. Excuse my passion. Anywhere. And you can't find it anywhere at all. By the way, just on a side note, if you notice in the book of Galatians 3, 1 through 5, Paul states, "O foolish Galatians, who bewitched you?" It was, in other words, did you receive the Spirit by the keeping of the law of Moses or by the hearing of faith? Are you so foolish, having begun by the Spirit, are you now being perfected by the flesh? Did you suffer? In other words, having begun in the Spirit, because they started keeping the law of Moses. In the book of Colossians, we find right before verse 8, remember, this is leading to the context, gentlemen. It's leading to the context of verse 8. We find, as you therefore have received Yahshua the Messiah, so walk in him. As you therefore have received How did you receive Yahshua the Messiah? He's telling the Galatians, did you receive Yahshua? Notice the context and the correlation. So walk in him. It's like all Colossians, remember, is written 10 years later. It's almost like as if though he's warning them not to fall into the same snare the Galatians did. Except we know this is not talking about Gnostics. This is not talking about asceticism. And it's not talking about pagan worship. It's talking about law of Moses. So again, for Jared to assert something, in other words, I just sense nothing but partiality from Jared. Totally. And again, glory not, lie not against the truth. That is not context. That's insult to intelligence. I say that humbly. I say it as humbly as possible. Okay? Now, here's where here's the sad part. After hearing all of that, after hearing all of this, Kingdom Seekers, how can you do this? How can you guys do that? Y'all are better than this. Here's your video on Galatians 4. Here's your video on Galatians chapter 4. And I'll just to speed it up, I'll show you the part I'm talking about. Matter of fact, I'll start it right here. This is where you break down chapter 4.
Abba, Father. Let's continue our series in Galatians chapter 4. Galatians 4, verse 4 through 6. But when the fullness of the time had come, Elohim sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because you are sons, Elohim sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying out, Abba, Father. When verse 4 says Yeshua was born under the law, it means he kept the law perfectly without sin, thus was the only man to be able to take on the price of sin and death, redeeming us, purchasing us out of slavery and into the kingdom. Thanks to Yeshua, we are no longer slaves to sin and death, but sons of Elohim. And as sons, by faith in Yeshua, we get to cry out to the Almighty Most High as our Abba, Father. Galatians 4, verse 8.
And here comes those 3 verses. Remember, Kingdom Seekers, you put out a video on Colossians 2, 16 to 17. You're bringing this gentleman Jared on there, and you assert that Christians throw context out the door just based off of one or two verses or whatever again, you see what you said in Colossians and your comment, your video on Colossians 2. Okay. Now, when you get to Galatians 4, 8 through 10 or 8 through 11, listen to what you're about to say right now. Now, this is what really just, oh, guys, please don't tell me you're one of those guys. Please, and I'm not saying you are, but man.
But then, indeed, when you did not know Elohim, you served those which by nature are not Elohim. But now after you have known Elohim, or rather are known by Elohim, how is it that you turn again to the weak and beggarly elements, to which you desire again to be in bondage? You observe days, months, seasons, and years. The Galatians were former pagan worshippers, worshiping false gods, which had their own days, months, and years of worship. Paul calls them out by saying, "Why return to your pagan ways?" This was because the Galatians had been receiving persecution not only from the Jewish sect, but also from the pagan Romans. So the Galatians contemplated joining either side to please anyone. But Paul said, stop, do not take one step forward, coming to the faith in Yeshua, and then 2 steps back, returning to paganism and or joining a legalistic Jewish sect. Also, verse 9 is in no way calling Yah's Torah the weak and beggarly elements. Paul says that they, the Galatians, were former idol worshippers.
This is where I got to stop you right here. This is a tragedy. That is a tragedy. There is nowhere in the book of Galatians, since you bring in your scholarship, bring in your exegetics, bring them all in, bring in the Holy Spirit, Bring in James 3:13 through 18. Bring it all in here. That is a flat-out doctrine of demon. There's nowhere in the book of Galatians, even out of your own mouth, even out of your own teaching, that is demonic wisdom, what you just did, Kingdom Seekers. I love you, man. I love you guys. Y'all are brethren. My beloved Messiah, I love you guys. I mean that. But right now, that stunt that you just pulled, no. That is not the context on any level at all. You cannot assert, again, how can you talk about Christians? No. There's nowhere you could read Galatians up and down, up and down, up and down. You cannot find that. That is not what Paul is saying at all. That is a deliberate twisting of three verses. They are observing you, just like the Colossians. You're beginning to do this: handle not, taste not, touch not. And Paul's like, over here with the Galatians, you all are beginning to observe days and months and seasons and years. What days, months, seasons, years he's talking about? Oh, well, Diana, the Ephesians, no, that's preposterous. Did he get in Peter's face because Peter is becoming a pagan worshiper? No. Is Barnabas being led away in the hypocrisy and becoming a worshiper of Diana, the Ephesians? No, that's preposterous. That's not the context. No. Oh, foolish Galatians, who bewitched you? Did you receive the Spirit by worshiping Diana, the Ephesians, or by the? No, that's not the context. We were under a tutor known as Hermes. No, that's not the context. Tell me, you that desire to be under the law, do you see where it says, tell me, you that desire to worship Diana, the Ephesians? No, that's not the context. There is nowhere in here where Paul is asserting you guys are going back to pagan. No, he is comparing them. What he's saying, I'll read it this way. Verse 8. However, at that time, not knowing Yahweh, because they were pagans back then, you were in bondage to them that by nature are no Elohim. Right, the pagan pantheon. Okay, they don't worship angels, pagan pantheon. Okay, but now that you have come to know Yahweh, or rather to be known by Yahweh, how turn you back again to the weak and beggarly rudiments, the law of Moses? That, in other words, these are Gentile newbies. They're beginning, which is what you just stated, is the context of Galatians, which we all know is the context of Galatians, which is why Peter, if you being a Jew, live as a pagan, live as the Gentiles do, and not as do the Jews, how do you compel the Gentiles then to live as the Jews? Do Jews worship the pagan pantheon? No. You're going to throw that context in the trash and twist this to make your doctrine fit. No. Then how can you even do a video about Colossians 2 and talk about Christians? Seriously, this is a doctrine of demon. What he's doing is he's trying to help the Galatians understand. To help you folks understand, let me put it to you this way. By you doing what you're doing now, oh foolish Galatians, it's like you going back to your pagan ways. I was a trainer twice as a bus operator. When you're training someone how to drive a bus, you're trying to, you got to understand first, this person is a newbie. You got to start them off with the milk. You got to break this thing down easy so they can understand, which is why Paul is using the analogy to explain to them that what you're doing now is like you going back to what you were doing then, to help them comprehend, because these fellas came along, these men that desire to be teachers of the law, they confidently affirm with their song. Peter stood condemned. which is why he makes up for it in Acts 15. This is why that turn the road, kingdom seekers. Right here, this is flat out what I'm here. I love you guys, man. Please don't take this the wrong way, but what you just said is a flat out. That's being a hypocrite up the yin yang. That is not the context. That is an abomination. There's no way. If we are to judge not as we be judged, for the same measure we judge others, which is what you're doing in Colossians 2, and I get it. And now I'm applying that measure. There's no way. Whoa, no. This is hold them back that are staggering the slaughter. Man, that's what I'm seeing right now. I gotta hold you. Please don't do this. Correct this, please. That's not what Paul's saying at all. That is not the context anywhere. Love you guys. Okay, honestly, please. Y'all bless you. Honestly, I mean that. Peace to you and your family. All you, John Lawton and all you guys there at Kingdom Seekers. Again, love you guys. Please don't take this the wrong way. It's a very passionate subject. Hopefully this will help. Love you guys. Y'all bless you. We'll talk again very soon.